Welcome to the American Grown Podcast, hosted by Austin Sullivan. The American Grown Podcast will focus on people from different walks of life and their journey to where they are now. Now, turn up your volume and settle in for a great episode.
Hi, I'm Austin Sullivan, and I'm your host for the American Grown Podcast, recorded inside the Colortech Creative Solutions studios. Today, we have Lou Fabrizi, a Master Army Aviator and Blackhawk helicopter instructor pilot who serves his country as a member of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. He is a husband and a father, and has a deep passion for music. Lou, welcome to episode 12 of the American Grown Podcast.
Austin, awesome. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Lou, I'm so glad you can make it. So for this episode, you're actually the first guest that is going to make us a homemade cocktail.
Yeah, man. I figured let's start it out right and get a drink to get us loosened up so we can have a good conversation today. So do you want me to go right into it?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so, I like bourbon, as many people do. And, I've been experimenting around with smoking bourbons. It's a very common thing to do with old fashions, that type of thing. I don't really like old fashions because they're a little too sweet for me. So I wanted to kind of come up with a technique, something I can make my own. So I mess around with these, smoking the bourbons using different kits, different things like that, mess around with different types of woods. And over about a year, this is kind of what I settled on, and I came up with this drink. So one of the woods that I like to use is pear wood, believe it or not. And people are like, pear wood, that's kind of weird. But what I've noticed is, the fruited type woods when you're smoking alcohol work a lot better than, say, like, a hickory wood or mesquite. Those ones are just a little too strong. So I settled on pear, which smells awesome and it holds in the alcohol real nice. And so at the same time that I was experimenting with this, I got a sample in the mail of this Mike's Hot Honey. And I'm like, well, whiskey and honey go together really well. So can I do something with this? So started messing around with it. And I kind of came up with this drink. So if you don't mind, I'm going to get started into making it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So we have a glass here, and we have these nice ice balls that you provided. So thank you for doing that. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to take the Mike's Hard Honey, and I'm just going to drizzle it over top of the ice cube, right? And kind of let that settle in there real nice. And then today I have a fine bottle of bourbon, right, which is Weller. Pretty common bottle of whiskey, but very impossible to get here in Pennsylvania. So I actually kind of picked this one up in New York, legally, of course. And this is a nice wheated bourbon. So I'm just going to pour a little bit in there like that.
All right.
Okay.
I'm with you. Yep.
Now we're going to let that sit and open up a little bit using the ice cube. Now, I'm going to take it and I'm going to smoke it, right? So I'm going to put this thing on top of it right here.
Okay.
And then we're going to get it smoking with the pear wood.
We're going to have a fire. All right.
We're going to have a fire, so hopefully we don't set the fire alarm off here in your studio. It's super nice. I don't want to mess it up. And then, so I'll just do it, then I'll kind of talk about how I came up with the name of it, right? So
yeah, light it up.
We're going to take this, and then the blowtorch is going to let the smoke come down on it really nice.
Wow.
It's kind of beautiful, right?
It's like a work of art.
It is a work of art.
So how did you look at that?
Yep. So now we're going to kind of let it sit there, and we're going to let the smoke absorb into the whiskey real nice, right? Yeah. Now, remember, we got the hot honey in there, too. And then after about 15, 20 seconds, we're almost there right now, I'm going to take it, and this is the best part.
Okay.
Ready? I'm going to do this, and then we're going to let the smoke just nicely come out.
Oh, okay.
Yep, now I'm going to do my side.
All right.
So we're going to take the blowtorch once again. We're going to get the smoke going down in there.
Look at that. And for all the listeners, the smell is amazing. Wow.
Okay, so we're going to let that set in there, and then the ice ball is going to fog it up real nice, too, and make the smoke nice and thick, which is good. And you can see in yours, it's just kind of hanging out at the bottom there.
Yeah, it's almost like a swamp down in Louisiana, just the fog there.
So now we're going to do that, kind of let it do its thing. Wow. Isn't that beautiful?
Very cool.
Okay, so now grab your glass. You can take that one. I'll take mine.
I'll take this one. Yep.
All right, we're going to cheers real quick.
Definitely cheers.
Give it a little swirl, and then just take a nice small sip on it. Nice, right?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Very good. Holy cow.
So what I call this drink is a Centralia, right? And everyone in this area is familiar with, and I think that's how you pronounce it, right?
Yep, Centralia. Yeah.
So everyone's familiar with that, kind of a famous town throughout the country, a video game, a movie based on it. Really cool place. So I was driving through there, and I came up with this idea. And so how it all kind of ties together, and I know it's a little corny, but the Mike's Hot Honey is the mine fire below the ground.
Okay.
That's the hot and the burn, right? And then as you smoke the drink and you take it off and it's smoking, that's your graffiti highway, or, your cemetery where the smoke's coming out of it too. So kind of a corny theme behind it. I would like for it to catch on. It may not. I will tell you that I've guest bartended a few times in Philadelphia, had some house parties, and these went over really, really well. So the Centralia, you got the hot burn below and then the smoke coming up from the ground.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, the taste, and it's, like I said, it's an art, but yet the act of making it, it's kind of like a little craft, it's not just pouring a drink in and throw some ice on it. You know what I mean? So no, thank you for bringing, I'm going to have another sip if that's all right.
No, please. We can sip on this the rest of the time.
Right.
And the smoke will kind of hang out there and continue to flavor the whiskey as we go. And then when you get to the bottom, it's definitely going to burn a little bit.
Okay, right. That's that hot honey down there.
Yeah.
No, the smoke aroma is amazing. And the studio's still intact. So, Dad, if you listen to this, we're good. Everything's all right. I told him what we were going to do, and he's a bit of a bourbon drinker, and my father-in-law is a big bourbon drinker. And I said, we're going to smoke some bourbon, or Lou is. And so studio's good. Everything's good. Lou, let's kind of talk about how you and I met. To me, it was always Mr. Lloyd or Howard Lloyd. Mm-hmm. Now, he's a serviceman, I believe, recently retired, and you know him probably much better than I do. I knew his family, his kids. But it was at the 2015 Hershey Lodge. I was photographing the 56th Annual Army Aviation Ball, if you remember. And you and your wife, Kathleen,
correct,
came up. I was there, part of Colortech Creative Solutions is Blue Cardinal Photography. So we were there photographing the event. People come up and get pictures, and you, I think, were the first couple to come up and take a chance.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and I do remember that very, very well. Kind of the background on that is I hate taking formal pictures, and you're in your dress uniform, your military uniform, and you're in your bow tie, and I am not a photogenic person whatsoever. However, my wife is. So she loves to take these formal pictures, and it's just so uncomfortable for me. But what you did, Austin, was you're funny, right? And you kind of made me relax a little bit. Out of like the 200 pictures we took that night, one or two of them, came out pretty good where I didn't look all nervous and everything like that. So we became friends soon thereafter and kept in touch over the years. And I think you might have photographed one of our formals one more time. And then, I recently put together, it was actually a few years now, the Battle of the Bands at the Allen Theater in Annville. Beautiful theater there. And I reached out to you to see if Colortech could sponsor it, and you did. And you actually photographed that event, and it turned out great. So, we're kept in touch. And then I saw that, you started this podcast, and I was like, I wonder if he's going to invite me on. And then the next day, I get a message from you saying, hey, would you like to be on the podcast? So,
yeah, of course.
Super pumped, dude.
To go back, the Allen Theater, great venue. Ed and Sue Felty, great owners and family friends. So, when you reached out, I was like, oh, this is a perfect mix. Yes, you were definitely one of the probably top 10 people. I talked to my wife about starting this podcast, and who do you want to interview? Who do you want to have on? Some were friends and family because, of course, everybody has a story to tell. Everybody wants to come on. But I want to definitely open it up to different people with different backgrounds, different stories. Some might be clients, some, connections that I made throughout the years. And, I'm glad you could make it today. So can we throw it back? What was your early childhood like? I don't know much about siblings or your mom and dad, what they do. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in I'm going to call it the Sticks, about 30 minutes outside of northeast Pittsburgh. So I'm not from the area here, about, again, 30 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. Very good childhood, very loving, great memories, great friends. I have a brother that's 5 years younger. He lives in Tampa, Florida right now. He's doing very well down there. Growing around, my dad actually was a prison guard, and he worked in a maximum security state prison in downtown Pittsburgh. So I will tell you at times that made for an interesting childhood because every once in a while I'd hear stories of what people did, why they were in the maximum security prison, and maybe that kind of worked as like a scared straight thing. I'm not quite sure, but they great parents, again, great memories, just a great childhood. And we were outside all of the time as kids, running around in the woods and, growing up. It was great. We traveled as much as we could, mainly in the United States, and we were just a very tight family. Was
there a story in particular? Because growing up in Lebanon, I know Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and all the big cities, can have some rough parts of town. And was there a story in particular that really kind of, as I say, scared you straight? that you remember?
Well, okay, since you put me on the spot on that one, I think my dad, again, he worked in this prison, and one year, Christmas Day, he actually took me in to the prison.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And we went in there and we kind of walked around and then he ended up locking me in a cell with a lifer. And he didn't do it to be mean.
Right.
He had this thing all planned out. And I don't want to, it wasn't a bad experience or a weird experience like that, but he just kind of took me around and showed me what it was like inside the prison. I wasn't a bad kid or anything like that. I think he just kind of wanted to show me where he worked. But, taking the kids to work is a little different when your dad's a prison guard in a maximum security prison, right?
Yeah.
But that was cool. So, yeah, and it was interesting. In fact, I think a lot of inmates from Philadelphia would actually go to Pittsburgh, and vice versa. That way, there wasn't a bunch of different gang things going on. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I do remember, like I said, going Christmas Day and walking around the prison, which was a super interesting experience.
Very unique. Early childhood, you get into high school, sports, athlete, musician. What did you do for fun in high school? What was your kind of drive?
I noticed a lot of people you've had on the podcast, were motivated by coaches or, the different things in high school. High school was certainly a positive experience for me. I had a great group of friends, fond memories, but I can't really say that I was motivated by anyone in particular. And I think the reason for that was I hadn't really found my stride at that point as a person where I wanted to go. I wasn't, I was kind of an average student in high school. I was an okay athlete. I played baseball, but not really for the high school. So high school really wasn't a thing for me. What I needed to do in high school was to get through it, get into college, and then find my way from there, which was really important. So not any life-changing things that really happened to me in high school, except for, good childhood and good friends. But that really wasn't where I found myself.
So you get through high school, you make those connections, make those friends. College life, how was that? And where'd you go to college?
Yeah, so that's really where I think I started to find my stride. I only applied to one school. That was IUP, a state school in Indiana, Pennsylvania. It's the only place I ever wanted to go. So once I got in there, I felt pretty good about where I was going. And then, very quickly, that's where I kind of found my stride and began to transform into the person I was today. Obviously, I still had a lot of growing at that age, but that's really where I started to feel comfortable about who I was. And I think the reason why was because I was on my own. I was making my own decisions. And really the most important thing was, the success or failure was strictly on me and no one else. Mm-hmm. There was no one going to be telling me, get up, go to school, study. IUP at that time was known as like the party school of the entire country.
Yeah.
And it was. So it was very easy to get caught up in that. And I kind of found a sense of responsibility where I could have fun, I could party, but I could also be responsible. And I started to feel really good about where I was. And I thrived in that situation, frankly. Met a ton of friends. And really, for the first time in my life, started to succeed academically, was in college, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the college life, can kind of go two ways. One is party atmosphere. And you don't take school seriously. And you just, you go 5-6 years instead of the 3 or 4, whatever it is, to get out. And then the other option is, like you said, you have all that free time and you can invest in yourself and you can work out, you can go to the gym, wake up, study, go to the library, and really, like you said, find yourself and what you're passionate about. You're in college. When did the military come about for you? I know some people, 2001 with 9/11, that drove a lot of people to join the service and become a service member. So what was that for you?
Sure. So, interesting story. So during my freshman year at IUP, I took an ROTC class instead of basically a gym class or a required class you had to take. And, immediately, and again, remember in high school, I didn't have any aspirations in the military. But I did this ROTC and I found it fun, challenging, and I immediately loved the camaraderie in it. It just was super cool. And I was like, I began thinking about possibly enlisting over the next year. So I remember my sophomore year, and to kind of put this in perspective, that was 2000. Okay, so this is before 9/11. I remember a very defining moment in my life where I was in this shitty little apartment with all my friends, and it was tight, and college was going great. It really was. But I was thinking, I think I want to join the military. And I remember this, again, defining moment where I said, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it the rest of my life. And I don't normally make decisions or have bold statements like that, but I said, this is something that I want to do, and if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it. So very soon thereafter, I enlisted in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. called up my parents who weren't expecting it. And I said, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, I joined the Army. They were like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Later that year, I went to basic training, and just out of luck, where the Army needed me at that time was an aviation unit in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour from Indiana. Did basic training, did my training. I resumed IUP later that year without missing anything, which actually worked out pretty good.
Nice.
And then got back into ROTC and started my journey of becoming a military officer at that point. And that whole thing happened right around September 11th. So I was already enlisted.
Okay.
I decided that I wanted to pursue being a military officer, and then boom, 9/11 hits. Yeah, so that was interesting. And then I'm thinking, hey, I'm making a good decision here, all that good stuff. Before I know it, I finished the rest of my college career out. The day I graduate from IUP, I also get commissioned as a second lieutenant.
Oh, wow.
And because I was already in the aviation unit, I kind of fell into the aviation or the pilot role. So very soon thereafter, in 2004, I find myself heading down to Fort Rucker, Alabama for flight school.
Okay.
Which is like a big culture shock. So you grow up in the Northeast Pennsylvania your whole life. You head down to the deep South in southern Alabama, and it's just a cool thing. And I embraced the whole thing when I went down there. But definitely being a Yankee down there in Alabama is a fun thing, and it's an awesome learning experience. So I did flight school. Soon thereafter, this is now post 9/11. It's 2004, 2005 timeframe.
Okay.
I'm going to immediately get sent to Iraq, basically. So that's kind of during the surge, and it was my time to go and do that. So I found myself 2006 timeframe being sent overseas to Iraq as an Apache pilot.
And I didn't mean to cut you off, but what was going through your mind? Because you're, a young man, you have this ambition, and you're like, hey, Mom, Dad, I want to join, and get in the service. So what's going through your mind? And then especially as you're in training and going overseas, what are your thought process? Just for the listeners out there and people that don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I think I was 24 or 25 when I was heading over to Iraq at that time. And everyone was going over. So if you were in the military, you're pretty much heading over to the Middle East, right? The training is extensive. You know what I mean? So it's like anything. I know you were a football player, and it's like practice, and then at some point you want to put me in coach.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
You're ready to go.
Yeah. So it's the same thing there. I also will tell you at the age of 25 that this would have been my first deployment at that point, and ignorance is bliss in the fact that you know what you need to do, you know what the mission is, you go over, you do that type of stuff, but you don't know what it's going to be like until you get there.
Right.
So,
what to expect.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of ignorance there, but not in a bad way. It's because you just haven't been there yet and you haven't done it.
Naive.
Yeah,
to say.
pretty much.
Yeah. So continue. I didn't mean to.
Yeah,
to
no,
cut you
that's
off
a great question. So I went over there as an Apache pilot, which is, if you know anything, so there's a lot of helicopters flying around this area, right?
Yes,
there
time.
hasn't been Apaches in a while, but Apaches are basically the fighter helicopter that the Army has. So I did that, did the year deployment. It went very well. Came back home, took about a year back in Pittsburgh doing some things, getting settled in. And then I think probably about 2008, 2009, I moved here for a full-time position at Fort Eatontown Gap. And I've really been here for the last 15 years now. So I kind of just summed up 22 in November. It'll be 22 years for me in the military.
Wow.
Kind of summed that up in about 5 minutes.
Well, thank you for your service. That's an extensive record. And I want to hit on some of those things you just talked about.
Sure.
So being an Apache pilot, what's your role on the battlefield? Are you picking troops up, delivering them, or are you more providing air support?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
I know I sound naive, but I really don't know. And
No, it's a great question because I'm now actually a Blackhawk pilot instead of an Apache pilot. At a certain point, you may change. We shifted around the helicopters. It's a long story. But the Blackhawk, you do pick up troops and take them and drop them off. There's room in the back. However, in the Apache, which I did when I was over there in Iraq, that's just a pilot and a co-pilot. And your main mission there is to do reconnaissance and support the ground commander. So you basically get assigned a mission. You go out, you check in with the ground commander, and he will tell you what to do from there. And you're there to protect them. And then if you have to, to fight back, you will. And the Apache has guns, rockets, and Hellfire missiles on it. So
wow,
yeah.
So you're ready for bear. I mean,
you are. Yeah,
you're ready to give them hell. Can you share with us maybe an old mission you went through and maybe a takeaway from that time, when you were over in Iraq?
So the majority of the time, that was during the surge, right? So there was a lot going on. There was hundreds of thousands of troops there. Most of the time, believe it or not, it's when you're over there, it's kind of boring. It's not like you're engaging in conflict every single day that you're there. You go out, you do your missions. A lot of the times you don't have to do anything. You come back, you eat dinner, you work out, you go to bed. You don't have to worry about a lot of the things, doing laundry or little small stuff like that. So in a way, going over and deploying is actually, in some aspects of life, easy. And then, sometimes it does get intense, but it's for a short amount of time. And then come back and you deal with that stuff. And then you come back to the States and, you make the best of it and you try to learn from your experiences, that type of thing. So there's a few, specific things I could talk about. I don't know if I really want to get into it, but that's kind of the thing I want to tell people, that it's not like this crazy, you're at war every second of the day. It's routine stuff. And then every once in a while you got to do something. And then, you come back and it's over.
Yeah. It's a lot of preparation. It sounds like a
Correct.
lot of being prepared. And then when it is time to act, you act and, successful at it.
So think about my football analogy, right?
Please.
Where you're practicing and then you finally get put in the game. Now all of a sudden the quarterback throws the ball to you and now it's time to catch the ball. And then that's a quick moment in time. And you either make the play or you don't, right? So
right, that's perfect. That's a perfect one. What's an average day for you like? Whether back home or in the military. I know we hit about a little bit. Prepping, laundry, working out, staying in tip-top shape. But what's that like? Your average day?
Yeah. So I thought about this a little bit. Over the last 22 years, I've had several assignments, and every one of them is different, and the requirements of what a typical day is going to look different, right? But what I can tell you is, my current assignment, I'll kind of put it in non-military terms. I'm basically an administrator and an instructor at a school where we teach people military graduate level aviation training. That's basically anything from like your instructor pilot course to your maintenance test pilot course, advanced helicopter mechanic training, that type of thing. We train all branches of the military, several different government agencies, and what's really cool is a lot of foreign military. Okay. So we have foreign military come to our school all the time, and that's actually one of the more interesting aspects of what we do is we see people from all over the world come to train here, which is great. My day looks a lot like anyone else that works maybe in an office or a school, but every once in a while they do let me go out and fly and train, which is pretty cool. So, it's normal stuff. You get there, you check emails, you go to meetings, that type of stuff. I think when people think of what it's like to be in the military, they think that you're doing push-ups all day. Right. No, it's a lot of checking and responding to emails and going to meetings and being on MS Teams and all that stuff there. So it's really like any other office.
Sounds very familiar. Yeah, it sounds very familiar.
Any other office job, really.
Yeah.
But again, the cool thing is every once in a while I get to go out and fly, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. The people that come in, they're allies to the United States, and where do they come from?
I'll just kind of go over that broad stroke. We have a lot of partners in the Middle East that train. We have a lot of people from South America, that type of stuff. And we come in and they basically do the exact same training that we're going for. And yes, they are all allies. So it's really cool to see them, their mission and how they view things. And it's really important to the partnerships that we have out there through all the world. So pretty cool stuff.
No, awesome.
I really enjoy talking to them and meeting them people. They're just
different experiences.
Yeah,
different walks of life. Just like the podcast. Why is it here at the Gap? It's a well-known location. Like you say, people come from all over the world to train here. I mean, this is one of the top places for aviators.
Yeah, I think what's public knowledge, and I think you can go on websites and see this. Fort Town Gap itself is I believe the second largest National Guard training site in the country. And it's just not aviation; it's pretty much everyone there. Yeah, so it's a very busy post.
We hear the Gap, firing off, and you hear this boom, and it's like, oh, well, there must be training at the Gap. That's what people say. Now, my wife said not to mention this, but I'm going to.
Okay.
When I hear aviation, I think, and it's a popular movie right now, but Top Gun.
Yeah.
Is that, I know it's totally different aircraft. Is that kind of what life is like in some cases, or?
Yeah, I mean, no.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought you were going to say.
So to be fair, I haven't seen the new movie. I actually do want to go see it. I didn't particularly like the first one, which I know is unpopular, but there's always Hollywood, movies about what happens in the military. Some of them are a little more accurate than others, and is a little bit of that lifestyle there, sure. But I think being in the military is a profession. So I think what people don't realize, it's going to be like any other profession out there where, it's not either overly glamorous or, but it's, it's a profession, it's a job.
Totally. In your career, you've received multiple military awards, and in your bio, you listed some. I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, so that was a kind of a copy and paste from my military bio because, to be honest, I'm not huge on awards. It's not overly important to me. But there is one that I did get recently that I am pretty proud of just because it's kind of hard to get the career path that I went. So just recently, I received my Master Aviation Wings, which is basically the highest time and service badge you can get as an Army aviator, meaning that I've been flying for over 14 years. And then the harder part of it, for me at least, was to get to 2,000 flight hours. So if you get 2,000 flight hours in 14 years, you get these master wings, which it's hard to get in my rank. So I'm a major, hopefully be lieutenant colonel here sometime in the next year. A lot of guys you will find with that rank do not make master aviator. There's another set of rank structure in the Army that flies, and they're called warrant officers. And they're the technical experts when it comes to military or Army aviation, right? So they're doing a lot more flying. I'm doing a lot more of the emails and the MS Teams type stuff. So to kind of stick with it and reach that 2,000 hour mark, I'm pretty proud of that.
Kind of tied to the desk doing the stuff that needs to be done, not necessarily, you want to do, but you got to do it. So,
and it's hard to stay motivated to do the desk job and fly at the same time.
I believe it. You're just sitting, filling out emails compared to rocking it in the skies.
Yeah.
I mean, for real.
So, there's a lot of helicopters. We're a very busy, aviation community. So if you like that sound and flying over your house, that was me flying. If you find it completely annoying because it happens too much, it was someone else. It wasn't me.
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah. So now, Lou, what are you most passionate about?
Obviously, I'm passionate about my career, about music, which I think we'll talk about here in a minute. I'm passionate about representing the post 9/11 veteran community. But honestly, my ultimate passion is being the best father I can for my two boys. I have a 6 and almost 9-year-old boys. And, my parents kind of set the foundation for me to be a decent father. And now I need to do everything I can to give my children the best life possible. I do believe, in this country that every generation can get better. And really, if I be a good dad, then everything else that I do will fall into place. My career, my hobbies, that type of stuff. But I think first and foremost, when you have kids, your life changes and it becomes about them, right? And I'll tell you, and I know, and I think it's public knowledge, right?
Yes.
You and your wife are expecting very soon, right? Your life is going to completely change where, it's been about Austin and the wife and all that stuff like that. It's going to change and it's going to be about the baby, right? And being a parent certainly isn't easy and you're not going to be perfect, but what you need to do is strive and never stop trying to be that better father figure and to be that role model. It's an awesome experience and it's super amazing. Honestly, that's my passion. And if I do that well, everything else should fall into place.
And that makes sense. I know it's Courtney and I, it's our first. So we're excited, a little jittery, because everyone's been saying it's going to be a big change. And of course, it is. But to hear some tips from you, because you're really building in my mind, the cornerstones for your children, whether it's discipline or just teaching them, day to day, because they watch everything you do.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome for you. And you just kind of remind me of something like being in the military, being in aviation. Yeah, there's a lot of scary things that may or may not happen, right? But I will tell you, the scariest day of my life by far was when with our first son, Nicholas, when they're like, all right, go home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like all of a sudden I have this. What do I do? I have this little baby, and we had him in the thing, and we snapped him in the car seat, and my wife and I both looked at each other and like, "Whoa, this is a scary moment in our life."
That's when it gets real, I guess.
And now my son's ready to turn 9, so
wow, that's
super
awesome.
cool, man. You get through it. It's amazing.
No, we're looking forward to it. Yeah. So for all the listeners out there, end of August, Parker Ann Sullivan is going to be coming into the world. Courtney and I are very excited, and she's the first on both sides. So it's going to be a lot of love.
Well, cheers to Parker.
Hey, amen to that. Cheers.
Have your Centralia.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, that's good. Lou, can I get a little more?
Yeah, man.
Well, just a little bit. I know it took a lot to get you here, but don't give me the bottle. Let's pour a little bit.
I don't want to spill anything on the nice equipment in here.
Oh, no, I have to wipe it down. Do you want any?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay. So, all right, I'll put that back over there. No, we don't drink it all. Because I just have to walk home. To get back on track, your volunteer time, your nonprofit, you work with a lot of veterans organizations. Can you shout them out? Definitely give them a plug here.
Yeah, sure. So I do very much enjoy volunteering and advocating on behalf of the current military as well as really all veterans. I spent over a decade on the board of the Pennsylvania National Guard Associations, which is called PENGAS. That's the abbreviation for it. And what I like about that organization, it's an organization that's solely dedicated to the well-being of the nearly 20,000 soldier and airmen in Pennsylvania. So what most people don't know is the Pennsylvania Guard, right, which is Air Force and Army, has almost 20,000 soldiers and airmen. It, at times, is the second or third largest National Guard out of all 54. So it's a big organization. And then this organization, PENGAS, solely concentrates on those people here in Pennsylvania and a lot of local people, which is great. They do a ton of amazing things. One of the things that we do is a charity called the Guard to Guard Foundation. It's a 501c3F. And basically what it does is if, say there's a soldier overseas and he's deployed and back home, the heater breaks or the air conditioning breaks or something like that.
Yeah.
And he can't afford it, right? What this foundation is very quickly give that soldier or airman some money to take care of that and fix it.
That's huge.
And it's all done on fundraising and donations and all that type of stuff like that. So if anyone is interested in going and checking that out, you can go to pngas.org, O-R-G, and then under there, you'll see the G2G, the Guard to Guard program, and you can make a donation if you want. We have a lot of great sponsors and people that we work with to keep this program going. Really proud of the stuff that we do. And another thing that's really cool about it is there's also, this organization is on the national level, right? So PENGAS is the Pennsylvania chapter of a national level that's out of Washington, D.C. So I go to the annual conferences every year there. And what's super cool about that is I travel all over the country to these wonderful cities, and I get to meet all these other veterans that kind of have the same thing. And like I mentioned early on, when I first thought about getting in the military, there was something about the camaraderie that was super special. And I continue 22 years later to still feel that camaraderie, which is just amazing. So that's why I love doing the veterans organizations. It's important. The last thing that we do, which is really cool, is that we do advocate for veterans benefits both in Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. So we'll take off the uniform, put on a suit, and we'll go down and, we are a lobbyist organization too, is one of the things we do, which is people think a lobbying is a bad word, and it's totally not. If you do it right, what you're doing is advocating for those people. And we've got some amazing legislation passed, both in D.C. and especially in Harrisburg. The people in Harrisburg, the state government has been amazing to the veterans, so I want to thank them for that.
Oh, that's
really
awesome.
Cool stuff.
Oh, that's awesome to hear, because you don't always hear the positives, and hear what people are doing to better, the community here and the people that have served. Being in the service, a lot of stress, a lot of you're always on the go, always being prepared. I understand outside of work and community service, you really enjoy music and own a significant amount of guitars, which that actually surprised me.
I'm always buying and selling guitars. So at any given time, I may have 20 hanging around, right? But it's just not guitars, right? It's banjos, it's ukuleles, it's 6-string guitars, acoustic guitars, bass guitars. That's kind of my specialty is bass.
Okay.
And one of the cool ones that I have is I actually have a stand-up or upright bass. It's a 1952 K blonde bass, right? So it's from 1952.
Whoa.
It's the same upright bass that Johnny Cash and Elvis's bass player used. This thing should probably be in a museum somewhere, but I just slapped the hell out of the thing. I actually played it in the last band that I was in. We're not together anymore, but what was really cool about it was kind of a mix of rockabilly, punk, and country music, and we did very well here in the area. But yeah, like I said, that thing should probably be in a museum, but I just slap the hell out of it all the time, and it's a lot of fun. So I started getting into guitar at maybe age 14. 2 quick stories on that was,
yeah, please.
Someone introduced me to a bass guitar, one of my music teachers, and I was like, this is a lot cooler than playing trumpet, which I was playing trumpet. No disrespect to the trumpet.
Right, definitely.
I just wasn't good at it, right? But then I started playing bass guitar, and I really liked it. At the same time, I had a neighbor where I grew up, and he worked in a hospital, and all these doctors played guitar. It's really crazy. All these professional doctors, surgeons, cancer doctors, they played guitar, and they would come over my neighbor's house, and they'd sit around, and have a few drinks and sit around the campfire and play guitar. And my buddy and I were just like, man, we want to be just like these guys.
Yeah.
So he started playing guitar. I started to get a little better at bass. We started putting together bands, and again, picked it up at the age 14, and I have not set it down yet. It's the only, with being, with my career and being a parent, there's not a lot of time for stuff.
Right.
This is the one thing that remains for
You
me.
make time for this.
Sure.
Yeah. Do the kids, do they like appreciate when you play and your wife? Like, do you have those gatherings? People come over?
So I have the gatherings all the time. I don't know if my wife likes it, but she respects the fact that that's the one hobby that I have left. I think she thinks it's too loud.
Okay.
Which is really funny. So we joke about it. We joke about that all the time. But my kids are definitely interested. If they want to pick up and start playing, they can. If not, no big deal. But they do kind of enjoy watching the adults come over, just like I did when I was a kid watching my neighbor.
Going into 2020, COVID affected a lot of people, shut down a lot of businesses, closed out a lot of restaurants, and we won't get too deep into it because that's a whole nother wormhole people could dive into. But are there any issues that you're still facing today from that?
COVID was interesting for everybody. I don't think, looking back on it now, almost 3 years later, it's like I don't think anyone really knew what to do. But so from a professional standpoint, from what we did at work, it's like you can't really shut down military training for a long amount of time. COVID hit, I think we shut the school down for maybe a month or so, but things got to keep moving in the military, right? So a bunch of really, really smart people got together and put together a plan to start bringing people back in the summer of 2020 to start training. And we went into everything and we got permission from, the state leadership and everything like that. And we were able to bring students back and start training. It was painful, don't get me wrong, because, there were certain protocols we had to put in place, different masks, how they stayed in our dorms, which is, it's kind of laid out like a college campus. We had to be very cautious. And I'm proud to say that really since COVID kicked off and we started bringing people back, we trained almost 2,500 students since then.
Wow.
And we've been very successful with it. We kept everybody safe. A little bit of luck's involved with that and a lot of smart people getting together. So it was good to see that happen. And we continued training the military, which was really, really good. From a personal level, my family made an interesting experience of it as that we weren't really allowed to travel outside of Pennsylvania, right? But it was important for us to still have family experiences. So we found a lot of stuff close by in Pennsylvania to go do, right? We threw on our masks and we went out and we did stuff. We went to the Poconos, we went to Seven Springs. We had some great family experiences. And even though we didn't know what was going to happen, those are some of the best memories that I've had with my kids because we made the best of it. And we did it safely. And it's just, we can look back on some of that stuff and say, yeah, it sucked, but we made the best out of it that we could.
Yeah, quality time, with the family. Sure, right. You had to throw the masks on, which no one's a fan of that, let's be honest. But I know, like, my wife, my father, and, the family, we went to Hershey Park. We had season tickets and before COVID hit. And it was great because there was no lines, nobody was around. And now we try to go, this summer, and it's like packed. It's just like back to normal. Of course, no one has masks or things like that. Spinning off of COVID, and this kind of goes back to your passion, but, what drives you personally to do what you do day in and day out? Sometimes it's different for people, their passion compared to what drives them. Yeah,
I kind of already hit on it, Austin. Once you have children, in my opinion, what you do day to day, it all comes down to your kids and your family and supporting them and giving them the best life that they can and trying to make things a little better every generation is really what I think is important. So, being a good husband, being a good father, that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. Eventually, at some point, I'm going to transition out of the military and I'm going to do other stuff. So hopefully when that happens, set myself up, have more time to work on veterans affairs, advocate for them, do more music, that type of thing. That's the plan right now. But focusing on the kids is really my day-to-day goal.
How can our listeners connect with those amazing organizations you mentioned earlier? Just kind of repeat that one more time.
I talked about pengas.org, PNGAS.org. You can see the kind of different things we've done, the legislation that we passed. It's really fascinating stuff. And then you have the G2G program there if you want to check that out. One thing that we didn't talk about was the guitar.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I think the bourbon started hitting me, but please, let's definitely talk about that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we were talking about guitars and how I own a lot of them. So one of the things that I tried to get into was like, okay, let me design my own guitars. And this is a really popular thing for guitar players to do. It's kind of called a parts caster, where you take, because all the guitars I bought, there's always something I'm like, well, I wish they would have did this and I wish I would have done that. So what people will do is they'll buy parts and then they'll assemble them. And I did a few of those and they turned out well. Well, for this one that the listeners can't see right now, but maybe we'll take a picture of it.
Yep, pictures on social media.
I said, I'm going to actually build a guitar. Now, the problem is I don't know how to do the woodworking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like an undertaking.
It is. It is. And you have to have the right tools and all that stuff. So my friend Zach, who I work with, he's this amazing woodworker, and he did this all by hand. So no CNC machine, anything like that. He did it all by hand and did it.
Holy cow.
So that was super cool. But one of the interesting facts about it is the wood that the body is made out of is local ash wood. And if you know anything about the ash tree, is that there's this, I think it's called the North American ash beetle or something like that. It came in and it basically destroyed the ash trees all over the country. Fender's a famous guitar maker, and they were making their bodies out of ash until the ash population got decimated. I actually got this piece of ash from this farm in Mechanicsburg. The cool thing about this farm in Mechanicsburg is the person that owns it is a retired one-star general. So after he got out of the military, he did some other things, but one of his passions, he'd be a great guest for you to have.
Yeah.
I'll have to hook you up with him.
I'm listening.
One of his passions is doing these live edges, which is these large slabs of wood.
Oh, I love live edge. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I do. I really do.
The name of this is called Wolf Creek Live Edge. And we call him General Wolf, right? Because he's a general. But so he has this live edge, and he has this beautiful, organic, locally sourced wood, and it's a lot of it's from trees that have fallen over, and he comes and he cleans them up. And I got this piece of ash from the wood pile there. My friend Zach cut it up. I did all the design of, the hardware and everything through trial and error. It took about a year during COVID, and we got this guitar done. And then once we finished it, we went back to the wood pile at Wolf Creek Live Edge, and we photographed it in the wood pile. Which is really
that's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have those on Facebook, those pictures?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I can share some of them. So
yeah, I'd love to see them. I mean, it looks amazing. Like, and there'll be pictures on social media for all the listeners, but and when I mean amazing, like professionally made and something not mass produced, obviously, but just like the quality of work done there. Fantastic job.
Thank you. Yeah,
seriously.
Again, Zach, my friend Zach Rice, he's a fantastic woodworker. Did it all by hand. He has upgraded to CNC now, but this one was done by hand, and it coming from the wood pile from the retired General Wolf. It was cool. So if your listeners want to go on Facebook, he's under Wolf Creek Live Edge. He basically posts almost every day. He talks about his adventures in cutting all this wood and where it's from, and he knows the history and how old the wood is based on the rings. It's really fascinating stuff. So he's a good friend of the family, and that's what came out of it right there. So pretty cool endeavor, and it's now my favorite guitar.
Oh yeah, I can see why. So definitely General Wolf. Seats open and doors always open if you'd like to come on the podcast.
Sure, I'll connect you guys.
Oh, perfect. And now, Lou, before we close out, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
Again, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. It definitely we loosened up a little bit as the bourbon went going, so that was awesome. I do wish you the best of luck with your podcast. I think you're onto something here. I can't wait to see what this thing becomes. I also want to give a shout out to my wife, Kathleen or Kathy, who you know. My boys Nico and JoJo, they're gonna listen. I think I did swear a few times, so my oldest son Nico will call me out for that and make me put $1 in the swear jar. Yeah, which he doesn't let me swear, which is funny. So I'll probably have to put $2 or $3.
It keeps you honest. Jar. No, that's awesome. Yeah.
And I'd also like to say that now that COVID is over and people are going back to Hershey Park and all that stuff like that, go out and listen to live music. Very specifically from local musicians, right? Because, I noticed that the Hershey Park, when, Guns N' Roses come, these things are selling out, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
But go to the Allen Theater. You know what I mean? Go to Club XL. Go to one of these places locally. There's fantastic venues in the area. And go hear these unbelievably talented local artists because they need to support more than ever now. Right? Yeah. So live music is back. Go see it.
Oh, for sure. And there's so much talent locally. I don't know. There's a gentleman, country singer, Warren, starts with a Z. He just released a 717 tapes, and he just blew up. And he's right here from PA, right in the area. So I couldn't agree with you more. Lou Fabrizi on the American Grown podcast in the Colortech Creative Solutions studios. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
Cheers. If you want to see more American Grown content, follow along on Facebook and Instagram. Username American Grown Podcast. If you received any value, please share this episode with friends, family, and coworkers. And lastly, subscribe and leave a review.
If you'd like to be a featured guest on the podcast, please direct message or email Austin at americangrownpod@gmail.com.